Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the other games we just didn't have a chance to get to on yesterday's show. Wanted to make sure you guys are fully up to date on those because a lot of them would have a ton to do with the CFP playoff going forward. But let's get into the superlatives for this past weekend because there's quite a few of really interesting ones. I don't think this weekend was quite as A&M centric as a lot of people want it to be. I kind of wanted to spread the wealth just a little bit here because they could dominate a lot of this, and frankly, they did get quite a bit of shine here. But at the end of the day, wanted to highlight a lot of the other big-time wins around the country, and we'll start with the biggest win of the week. Not necessarily the game of the week, not necessarily the blowout of the week or anything like that, just the team that sent the biggest message, the team that, it's hard to describe. A team that kind of did what they needed to do, earned respect, got up closer to the CFP, however you interpret that. There's a number of different ways to go about it, but I think Oregon, this one sounds a little bit crazy, but the way that they went about business against Illinois was really impressive to me, and I'll talk about it here in a second, but it was really incredible, huge confidence booster for that team moving forward, and I think it puts them in a position where I don't know if anyone's really going to touch them the rest of the way in the Big Ten the Big Ten race because the schedule they have coming forward, no one should be able to touch them. Obviously, this thing could get crazy, but at the end of the day, they're playing elite football and they really planted their flag this past weekend. Then you had an Indiana team that played really good football in very bad circumstances. Curtis Rourke not playing in this game is one of those things that you feel like an undefeated team playing really good football, but the offense has been kind of carrying the weight for a lot of the season. Losing your starting quarterback, could things go awry? It didn't at all. They were able to handle business, really go about it really efficiently. D'Angelo Ponce is an absolute star in the making. They're doing incredible things out there, and I think it's one of those teams that just continues to become a little bit more like reality of them being in the CFP. But the winner to me is Boise State. This was a win that is maybe bigger than any other one this past weekend because they put themselves not only in the driver's seat, but very firmly in the driver's seat for the CFP G5 spot because I'll be totally honest, I don't want to say that. I think an undefeated Army would get in. But at the end of the day, let's say Notre Dame does beat Army. There's no chance. It's not going to be Boise State if they go out, win the rest of their games, go 12-1, have Ashton Jeanty leading the way. They will be the team. I can promise you that. But at the end of the day, still plenty to figure out here. But I do think Boise State got the win that they very badly needed, and they knew they very badly needed at the beginning of the season. And then we got individual performance of the week. And if I'm talking about individual performances, you're talking about Travis Hunter. This guy was remarkable. He had a career high 153 yards receiving, 2 scores, and then he had 4 pass breakups on the other side. He only played, I believe, 3 snaps off. It's insane. It's one of those things that every single week, I think I'm going to be a little bit more tame to it. I think I'm going to be a little bit more understanding of it, or at least let it roll off my back. And every time my mouth drops open, I don't get it. I don't get how he does it. I don't even understand how he practices throughout the week and then does that. But at the end of the day, he is a different human. He is a different person. He is an alien. So he's going to do him. He's incredible, and I cannot wait to see what he can do the rest of the way. And then we got to give some love to Bo Pribula because, man, that was a tough spot to be put into. You're coming into a place where Camp Randall at night is a atmosphere. It is one of those places that will eat some of these guys for dinner and spit them out. But he was able to handle it. 11 for 13, 98 yards, 1 touchdown, and then full control of this offense. It was really incredible to watch. Him and Andy Kotelnicki feel like a very good fit, honestly. But I'm not saying they're going to change quarterbacks by any means, but it felt like a very good fit, and man, did he execute at a really high level. Marcel Reed's the winner. I don't think this has to be talked about too much. There are plenty of guys that put up crazy stats, and there are plenty of guys that did incredible things, no doubt about that. When you walk into that energy, when you walk into that atmosphere and totally change that building in a play, essentially, because he walked onto the field, scored on his very first play, this entire thing changed. The entire game changed. The entire season changed for A&M when he walked onto the field. He went 2 for 2 in passing game, 70 yards passing, including that big one over the top to Noah Thomas, 9 carries, 62 yards, 3 touchdowns. The dude was in full control. It's not going to be, the gaudy stats that everyone loves to see, but at the end of the day, he was remarkable, and he was one of those guys that was put in a really tough spot and responded as well as you could have imagined he would respond. But moving forward to statement of the week, we're going to stay right in College Station because that was a very big statement, no doubt about that. Because there's been so many years where A&M's played good football to start the season. We have seen this time and again. It's always October. It's always October's the one where you lose 2 or 3 games, things start to go awry, and you end 8-4, and things go really, really terrible. This was not that. You won a game going into November over a top 10 team at home, and you put yourself in a position to very well make the CFP, make the SEC title game, and be a team that is going to be a problem for the rest of the way and really for quite some time to come. So this wasn't, a dead cat bounce where you beat Alabama a couple of years ago in that stadium. Great, great moment. You were also 0-2 walking into that game in conference play. You finished 8-4. This isn't a rival. This is totally different than that game against Bama. The Bama game was cool. The Bama game is an awesome moment. This was the moment for A&M. And then for Notre Dame, I think this was a huge statement for them. I think it was one of those teams that a lot of people were poking holes in. And frankly, I still have holes to poke. And Navy did a rather good job of handing them that game in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, they are very firmly where they need to be and continue to on that quest for a CFP spot because it was a really dominating performance. That defense flies around, and Riley Leonard throwing the ball with confidence is a very interesting thing for this program going forward. BYU is my winner. I think this was one of those games that I picked, even I picked UCF like an idiot. But at the end of the day, the magic of I thought the magic of the BYU Cougars just had to come to an end at some point. It's no longer magic. I will argue, it was magic early on in the year. There were a lot of turnovers. There were a lot of things that were just bouncing their direction and finding a way to get them wins. It's no longer that. They're playing really, really good football. This team is awesome, and they do the thing that not a lot of people around the country are doing, consistently winning football games. And then we got the loser of the week, and yes, that is Ohio State. They did win the game, but man, they lost this week. I don't know where they are. I don't know what this team is going forward. I don't know how much they can do. I don't know if they can win a national title. I don't know if they can win this weekend against Penn State. There is so much confusion around this program going forward. I will say program, actually, because you lose this weekend at Penn State, Ryan Day's getting kicked out the door and you're having to restart. So this program is in a weird spot going forward. But as of right now, obviously you still have everything in your hands. You still got that win. So not the biggest loser of the week, but a lot of things to figure out in Columbus that I don't think they were thinking that they would have to figure out this year. LSU has to be included on here. Obviously, the chance was there to take over the SEC, to give yourself some wiggle room down the stretch, and essentially punch your ticket to the CFP, and the second half was just terrible. And frankly, I think there could be a lot of talk about Brian Kelly and making halftime adjustments and all of that type of stuff. Reality was, there wasn't too many adjustments to make. You make those 2 field goals, you're up 16 points, you're feeling really good about the way you're going about business. I think it was just A&M making all the adjustments in the world and really executing at a very high level. So I'm not out on LSU by any means, but I do think that was a moment where you had a chance to really take that next step. You left it on the table. But the loser of the weekend is the Florida State Seminoles, as it has been for, you could argue, pretty much every week this season. But let's be honest, you went from a 13-0 team, a team that, frankly, I said, and I probably will continue to say, deserved to be in the CFP. Doesn't matter. You went 1-7 the following year, and now it doesn't matter how many times you get to say that we deserve to be there, Alabama shouldn't got in, whatever you want to say, does not matter. You lost, and this is a very, very indicative performance of why they probably were right to keep you out. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think there's a lot more at play here, but at the end of the day, 1-7 out of the bowl eligibility before even November is not remotely where Florida State thought they would be this year. Moving on to surprise of the week, I think the Ohio State struggles were very surprising to me. They're a very weird team. They're one of those guys that just feels like they're kind of stuck in the mud right now. Whether it's the run game or the pass game not getting going enough, or the defense maybe having a couple of more holes against Oregon than we thought they would, just feels like they haven't brought it all together. It feels like they have all of these remarkably talented units and all of these remarkably talented players, and they're not playing as 22 guys together. They're not playing as 11 guys together on the field at the same time. There's so many different things that they're going to have to figure out, and it's one of those things that I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for the time being, but a lot of things can change in the next couple of weeks around Ohio State for the next 5 years, 10 years for Ohio State. A&M's turnaround was another big surprise to me, and it's not necessarily taking anything away from A&M or what they're capable of. It was more just LSU looked like they were just flowing in the first half. It looked like a lot of things could have gone wrong, and they still were going to be able to win that game because they were in full control. They weren't necessarily running the ball all that effectively, which came back to bite them, but Garrett Nussmeier was absolutely ripping the ball all around the field. He was doing everything you possibly could have wanted. And then it was just like a coin flip in the second half. Everything was totally different for that team, and A&M had a lot to do with that. I think LSU made their fair share of mistakes, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, I think A&M's adjustments were really the reason they won that, not necessarily LSU just not making adjustments or not doing the things they needed to do. And then you had Oregon's dominance. That was my surprise of the week, not necessarily because I think Oregon's bad or anything like that, but the reality was the way that they went about business in this game is totally indicative of what this team is going forward. It's indicative of who Dan Lanning is. It's indicative of what they've been trying to build for quite some time. A tough, hard-nosed team that's coached by a really tough coach, and Burt Bielema came into your stadium and you bullied them. You absolutely punked them. And as you can see from Noah Whittington, he's just getting through, running through a guy's face. So they did a lot of punishing in this game. And I think it was one of those games where I felt good that they were going to be able to win this one. I didn't think they were going to win it that way. And that's the biggest thing to me. Just the outright dominance at the point of attack is incredible from me, from Oregon right about now. And then finally, game of the week. I'm going to add Texas Vandy in here. This was a weird, bizarre, but kind of really fun game. You know, Texas led Vandy back into the game a couple of times. Vandy took full advantage of the mistakes as they do. I think this is a game where it wasn't necessarily, top to bottom, incredible, like all over the place, playmaking all over the place. But it was one of those that came down to the wire against all odds. It had a lot of that college football feel where somehow the team finds their way back into the hunt after being essentially should have been dead in a number of different ways. So Texas has quite a few things to figure out as we've talked about, but we'll see what happens over this bye week. And then for BYU UNLV, this was a really fun Friday night game. It felt like two teams that knew what this moment was. They were playing really, really aggressively, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Was incredibly impressed with all of those guys on both sides of the ball. Elite talent all over the place. Ashton Jeanty leading the way, and obviously with him finishing it off, it just a little bit of cherry on top of the sundae there. But the game of the week was SMU Duke, and it was the weirdest game that you possibly could have imagined. When SMU turns over the ball 6 times in a game, you don't expect them to win, but somehow Duke made it happen. But it was one of those games that it's just college football. Someone turns the ball over 6 times and wins a game. They block a field goal to force overtime. They have a number of different things go wrong, and they find a way to get it done. That's college football in a nutshell. So that is the game of the week for me. There's a number of other games that were incredible, but at the end of the day, that's the one that I like the most. It was so many incredible things from this past week, and another superlative is just all of the special teams coaches out there, because y'all were in your bag this past weekend. I don't know how many fake field goals that I saw, but a lot of them were beautifully executed. So really incredible to watch that unfold. But at the end of the day, let's take our last break here. And when we come back, we got to talk about my top 15 teams in the country. We are expanding from 12 to 15, give you guys an idea of where my bubble sits right about now. But let's get into this because it's a dilemma for me going forward. And I'll break it down right after this.